We almost dismissed the service and went across the hall to the point where Barbara Prose, who will be speaking here next Sunday, the same message that she's sharing today, to just kind of add our hearts and heads to what she has to say about a little bit of a tension that we've been experiencing here for the last 8 days or so regarding a message that was shared there last Sunday that seemed a little bit of out of step with the general consensus of this church, but at the same time, we have an open pulpit and an open parish pew attitude. People don't have to agree with what happens or is said from this space. And from time to time, we give our members opportunity to express their discontent or their content or their opinion about any number of subjects. That's very unique about this church. I love the intrigue and the uniqueness of All Souls, that we get along. We don't have to go along to get along. That we can mind many of the same things without having the exact same mind about everything. That's what makes us all souls. We're not the same, and we don't have the same opinion about everything. So that's quite unusual. It's like did you know that in a Buddhist church, temple, anybody can speak? Or is it Hindu? One of them, anybody can. But we have Buddhists and Hindu mentalities, or people that are into yoga and what we would call new thought or new age consciousness. Here we have people that are not, wouldn't consider themselves believers in the sense that most folk are. They are agnostics. Gnosis is the Greek word for knowledge. Agnostic means we don't know. And we're not sure, and we're not absolute about stuff. And most folk who say they're believers really are agnostics, because we don't really know, we just believe. We actually believe more than we know, only because we've forgotten most of what our soul knows, and we believe what we've been taught and told, and we know what our souls have experienced. But we're not so in touch with our soul. The Greek word is suke, where we get our English word psyche. We're not in touch with our psychic elements, with the part of us that knows or can prognosticate, can know in advance or know too. And you have two ideas and we share. We all have a extrasensory perception that we rarely acknowledge, and sometimes, again, we don't notice. Ignorance doesn't mean you don't know, it means you don't notice sometimes. Or you don't notate or make note of. So in this day and age, with the information highway and the apple that has a bite out of it, mine does, that could represent anything, but it's to some people the so-called forbidden fruit was bitten, and the knowledge or science of good and evil. There is a science to what you may call good and a science knowledge to what you may call evil. And the way the universe experiences or expresses either may be different than the way we've been taught to appreciate or evaluate either. There is some good in all bad and some bad per se in all good, because everything ultimately works in orchestration with a larger plan and a larger purpose. At least that's what I like to believe, and I feel better about believing that way. Makes me feel less threatened. Today we're supposed to talk about the gift of independence, and that's our month, the month of July, the whole month, the gift of independence. And I'm not sure that independence is a gift as much as it is something you create or something you earn or something you learn. It's an active participatory reality. It's rarely just given. Every human, and I'm quoting Stephen Covey, every human has 4 endowments. Number 1, self-awareness, conscience, consciency, with knowledge, independent will, number 3, and creative imagination. Let me say it again. Every human has 4 endowments, gifts. Self-awareness. We tend to ignore that, but it's impossible to ignore or to be self-aware. That's why we dress and we style and we feed ourselves and we express ourselves and we care for ourselves, even though sometimes we look like we don't, or we feel like we shouldn't, or we don't need to, but it's automatic to care. Like breathing is automatic. Getting thirsty and then drinking water is automatic, though most of us don't drink enough. Eating and having appetites for whatever, we tend to fulfill those habitually, automatically. There's a normal physiology about meeting certain needs. Anyway, we have this self-awareness, we have this conscience, we have independent will. That doesn't mean we carry it out. That doesn't mean we are actually free to experience it all, but we have independent will. Even little children, when they cry or express displeasure about something or desire for something, the only way they know how to do that is to cry. Babies, infants cry. They kick while they're still in the womb. Puppies and animals and dogs. I've spoiled a little puppy that we've been looking after, and she's becoming more of a nuisance, but she's cute as ever. But she whines more, and I've given her too much human food. I know that's terrible. I'm gonna have to send her to obedience school because I'm not that good with. She looks at me and she influences me, and I consider myself independent, but I'm really not. I'm hanging on. I mean, I feel bad when that dog is not happy with me. And sometimes I make her feel bad when I'm not happy with her. We all do that. These give us, Stephen Covey said, these give us the ultimate human freedom, whatever that is. The power to choose, to respond, to change. Say it, the power to choose, to respond, and to change. Now, let me think about, this is a scripture that I usually have used around July 4th, Independence Day, for the last 35 years. It's in Galatians 5, and in the King James it says, "Stand fast or firmly, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ," and I add consciousness, "has made us or created us free." Stand fast. Now, Paul was writing to the church of Galatia, for those of you who are Bible students or would like to be, because Judaizers had moved in among the new Christian church, which wasn't even 30 years old yet. The whole doctrine, the dogma, the discipline of Christianity was very new, because Christianity is a Jewish religion. It's named after Christ, which is Mashiach in Hebrew, Messiah in Latin or English. It means anointed one. The Hebrew race, the Hebrew religion, the Hebrew people, as many other people groups, have some kind of hope that a person will appear on the scene with all the answers. Somebody who's going to make it right. Somebody who's going to fix everything. Sometimes we expect that in our presidents. Or our congressmen or governors or mayors or parents. Or a child that did well. We always look to some human being to provide a certain or fill a certain gap that we feel. We call ourselves independent, but we're dependent, and that word pendant means it's like a piece of jewelry that hangs. We all are hanging on to something, even if only hope. We're all dependent or codependent or interdependent on something, someone, or someone's. No man is an island or woman to themselves. You've often heard me say we all travel along, but none of us travels alone. We pick up opinions, our hitchhikers, passengers along the way. And we're not always in the driver's seat. Sometimes those opinions or those passengers or those hitchhikers are in the driver's seat. And we're listening to those opinions. They influence us. They're simply thoughts. They're simply ideas or ideologies. They're simply imaginations or fantasies. We all wrestle with this ethereal image-creating habit. We want stuff. We desire stuff. In fact, our life somewhat depends on the hopes we have to achieve something or to make progress or to not go backwards. We're all afraid of going backwards. Stand fast, therefore. The NIV has it like this. It is for freedom that Christ, and whenever I say Christ these days, I say the consciousness of hope. It is for freedom that Christ's consciousness has set us free. Stand firm, stand fast. Then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. He's referring to religious legalism. The Galatian church, there were the Judaizers were coming through, and there's these converts to quote-unquote Christianity, and then the Judaizers came through and told them that in order to be a real Christian, you had to be circumcised, and you had to honor all the Jewish festivals or holy days or holidays, and you had to commit to all the rituals of kosher and dietary and disciplines and all the other things that are associated with any particular religion. And so these men particularly were saying, you know, I want to be a Christian, and I'm a Gentile, and I wasn't circumcised at 8 days old, as most little Jewish boys are. And they were saying a grown man needs to be circumcised. And they wanted to be saved, but not that bad. So they were saying, I can't handle this. I mean, they don't have the kind of anesthesia that they have today. And when a little kid is 8 days old, they gave them something that had deadened some of the pain. So they were leaving the church, and Paul was freaking out. So he said, wait a minute, don't get back into legalism. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty of being free from dogmatic baggage. And don't be again entangled or embroiled in this mentality of slavery. I wish we would hold to that today, but we are inclined by nature to seek certain disciplines that give us a feeling of security. Freedom is not for cowards. Being really, really free is not for cowards. It's not a cowardly thing. Paul says to Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of fear. He used the word that means cowardice or timidity. God has not given us a spirit of weakness or timid. You're not easily intimidated. You don't have to answer, but how many of you see yourself fairly easily intimidated? Do crowds intimidate you? Does responsibility intimidate you? Does eating foods that you're not familiar with or hanging out with people with whom you're not familiar, what intimidates you? What makes you feel a little cowardly, a little weak, a little suspicious, even of your own integrity? How many of us actually live out and walk out our full, free thinking? One of the things that is appealing for so many people about President Trump is that he doesn't use political correctness. He doesn't use any correctness as far as I'm concerned. But he gets by with it because all of us has this inside anger. I wish I could say what I really feel. And he tweaks it and says it, and you don't know what's going to come out of him. And his base are mostly white evangelical Christians. That's his strong base, are really supportive of him. Now, what is independent about that? Tomorrow, the 4th, we celebrate the independence that was fought for this country to leave British tyranny. The king and queen, or the monarchy of the United Kingdom, and it was a international, what they call the British Empire, was dominating all over the world. Parts of India and Africa and Asia and Hong Kong just came back to China just a few years ago. But the British Empire was very, very strong and very, very powerful. We pulled away. There's 13 colonies, 13 stripes initially. 13 is a strange number, and then, of course, if you look on our dollar, you see the 13 steps of the pyramid, and at the top is supposedly the all-seeing eye. The whole idea of a new world order is actually written on the American dollar. It's been there for decades. Most folk don't know. Something is occurring. We think we're independent, but that is basically a fantasy. We are all dependent or hanging on for something, and we often use the term for dear life. That's a subtle intimidation and insinuation in our minds. We're hanging on for dear life. Some people's whole life is consumed with the idea of hanging on, holding on for dear life, even if your life isn't that dear. Interesting in America that more people commit suicide annually than homicide. What does that say about this God-fearing nation? What does that say about the "in God we trust"? We have more suicide and a higher number of suicides in America than any country in the Western world or any country in the world. There's something at work in this culture that does damage to the psyche of people and leaves them with a sense of hopelessness. I'm very intrigued with those numbers and that reality. Are we really as independent as we like to think we are? I'm even uncomfortable with us always saying the greatest country in the world. We may think we are, but it doesn't always appear that way. It sounds a little bit braggadocious, a little bit elitist, a little bit condescending, a little bit proudful that we are the greatest country, we have the greatest everything in the world. Well, the world is looking at it and say, what y'all gonna say now? Mr. Greatest Country in the World. Even if we are, to say it the way we do sounds a little bit braggadocious. It sounds a little bit arrogant. I never saw it that way until of late. We keep saying it when other countries accept that, but wouldn't that make other countries or cultures decide, let's just take these folk down? They think they're everything. And they don't want anybody else in their country. What if they all turned against us? I hope that never happens, but humans are humans. There could be all kind of little things underworking, undermining our strength as a culture. And we're right, we're as vulnerable, I think, as we've ever been, because there's so much polarization and so much distance between our thoughts and anger. And what's coming out of the White House, whether you like it or not, is reflective of what might be working in the deepest portions of our culture. I've said that the Trump presidency, and I don't want to talk a lot about that this morning, but I'm talking about it now, that Trump caused a big coming out party for all the haters on the down low. People you didn't know hated or were as angry. Sometimes it's not hate, it's just anger. And it's been there for a long time. And the further you get away from the coast to the interior of the country with the simplicity and patriotism and the faith-based culture, the more you get into fundamentalism, the more there's anger and resentment and resistance there that we didn't know was there and didn't want to and don't like to acknowledge is there. It's a bit intimidating for us to realize millions of people like the thing just the way it is as far as the White House goes. And they're very comfortable with it. And the little impetuous childishness and the juvenile mentality and the hit me back and he did it first and she hit me first and this whole thing. I mean, we're talking about the president of the United States and the leader of the free world, and at the same time, there's millions of people inside and outside this country who are very, very angry and are codependent on their anger to find identity or self-worth. Some people define their motivations by the anger and the pathos and the tension and the passion of trying to get something done, hanging on for dear life. It makes us frightened and intimidated and intimidating. Fighting fire with fire? Where's the turn the other cheek thing? The fire with fire deal is supposed to be Old Testament, and yet many New Testament believers are into the fire with fire or eye for an eye, tongue for a tongue. Independence basically means undependent, or not dependent, or not a pendant. A pendant, is a piece of jewelry, as I said, that hangs from a chain that's usually worn around the neck. In fact, the word pendant comes from an old French word that means to hang, or hanging, pendre or pendere, hanging. This whole idea of not wanting to hang or be hung. I don't want to be a pendant. Peninsulas connected to an island, pencils. There are other words that you can read into that about something connected, an appendage connected to something else. Most of us, including, and I've taken this whole new appendix. I can kind of get by with saying anything that I couldn't have gotten by when I was pastoring y'all at New Dimensions. Bishop Pearson couldn't say certain things, then he said them, and then the left finger of fellowship followed that. Not just the left foot, the left finger of fellowship followed that. Get the hell out. There was this thing, Christians could be the sweetest, kindest, most loving and supportive and humble and generous people as long as they like you. But that might be the case with all of us. Once somebody doesn't like you, remember, nobody can hurt you or hate you like somebody you love or who loves you. You can find that in divorce court. You can find that after a funeral when the will wasn't the way all the siblings liked, or the family didn't like the burial place or space or the trust or whatever. And then there's some people don't talk together for a long time, and they were raised together, slept in the same house, same bed, ate at the same table. With us, we got some of the same whippings for the same reasons. And then you grow apart and you don't like somebody that you really, really love. That's why love is a crazy word, because it doesn't always have the promise you think it does. It can be one of the most disappointing words. In fact, I'm far more into liking than loving these days. And I tell single people, don't just marry somebody you love, marry somebody you like, because there's a lot of people you love that you don't want to live with, or who doesn't want to live with you. Some of you are living with them now. And you love them to life and you love them to death, but you can't stand them at the same time. You really love them, but there's nothing about them that you like. Some of you see that person in the mirror. But what are you hanging on for, and what are you hanging on to, and what's behind both? Ask yourself, what am I hanging on? What do I want to be independent? I found myself independently thinking, independently speaking, and I went through some hell over that. I earned a certain amount of it, but I still owe a little bit on it. You earn independence, but you got to pay for it. You can own independent, you can earn independence, but it will cost you. It costs our country. It costs America. It continues to cost us something. There's an old saying, no man or person is an island to himself. This may be truer than we choose to admit. Human ego seeks independence or not depending on anything or anyone else for fear that they or may be unreliable or undependable. You don't like to depend on something you're not sure is dependable. I've heard a lot of people tell me that depends are not that dependable. I had my own experience with it, by the way. I had some surgery a couple of years ago. I said, that's the wrong name. Them depends ain't that dependable. I have to try pull-ups next time, but by another name. You've heard me say many times, on any given day, there are 5 things required or expected of you. 2 things we have to do, things we need to do, things we're supposed to do, things we want to do, and things we get to do or allowed to do. How much or how many, if any at all, of those things can be achieved independently? Things I have to do. How independent or non-dependent can you be? Can you live totally without anybody around? And would you want to? And if you do, why? And if you're not dependent on people, what are you dependent on? Is it bad or wrong or less than to be dependent on. It's a fantasy word. I want my own independence. I don't want to do my own thing. Your kids tell you that a lot. Remember when I first left home and came to college, of course, but when I got my own place, I realized how many things my parents had in the house that I hadn't even thought about having, like maybe a safety pin or some pliers or a thumbtack or some tape or toilet paper, napkins, Tabasco, seasoning, pots and pans and plates and dishware and little throw carpets and a pad under the sheet and then blankets and then electric blanket or a lamp and a light bulb and all the lights, and it's like, let me go back home. I want to be on my own. I want to be dependent. Well, go on your own. Get out this house. Get your own gas, your own car. Pay your insurance. Pay your taxes. Fill out all those papers. Answer all those questions. File stuff away. Keep yourself organized. Lately, I've been doing things I never thought about doing. Most of my assistants handle, especially before I got married, I didn't know how to go to the grocery store. I almost fired an assistant because she insisted I go to the grocery store. Now, I had no right to expect her. She didn't actually shop for me, but she found somebody to shop. I didn't know that they had those, those things that you could push your groceries over and it tells you what. They didn't use the cash register anymore. I hadn't put gas in my car in years. I forgot those things. That part of my brain died. And when I had to do it, I realized I should have been paying everybody more. My payroll was $100,000 a month in those days. What I had to pay, not to mention the other expenses to run the ministry. When I first started in ministry, I paid $160 for rent of a little office over here off of I-44. It only cost me $60 a month to say yes. Before I got through saying yes to my call, I was paying about $250,000 a month. And it cost me that much to say yes. I said, how come other people can say yes to their destiny and it doesn't cost them that much money? You don't even think about all that stuff. I have an independent ministry. I'm on my own. I don't work for Oral Roberts anymore. I'm on my own. What I didn't realize that he was paying 1,500 employees a month. And the cost of this, independence or not being dependent is actually a fantasy, an imaginary illusion that you talk yourself into, and it's okay till you wake up to the fact that you really are not that independent, and it's okay to be dependent on somebody else. Say to the person next to you, say, you don't know it yet, but you need me. And you could add to that, I don't believe it, but I need you. We don't like to admit that. You say, well, I don't care what you think. People who say that actually do care what you think, or they wouldn't have said it. I don't care what they think. I don't care what nobody thinks. You actually care what everybody thinks. And that's why you said you don't care. Leave it alone. Just let me go. Sometimes I will tell married men when you have married people, if the spouse is going, stop, just leave me alone. I don't need anything. I'm fine. I'm by myself. What's the matter with you? Nothing. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Well, what are you crying about? Nothing. Instead of retaliating, sometimes the best thing to do is put your arms around that person and say, hey, we got this. You could calm her or him right down. We've got this. Don't be offended by their co-dependency on you, because you're sometimes codependent on their approval or their acceptance. All of us like to be liked. That's why those who say, I don't need nobody, tend to be very angry. One of the things about another example is some of my friends who supported Trump and Trump won, is they're very angry now because they think that millions don't like their choice. You have family members who may have voted different than you and won, and they still are angry. You would think the president is still running for or campaigning for the office because he is somewhat insecure and dependent on whether or not we like him, not just his base. And that's no different than any one of us. All of us would like for everybody to like us. How many of you think you're some of the most likable people on the planet? Come on, raise your hand. Be honest. I think I'm very likable. If you don't like me, it ain't me. There's nothing wrong with you. All of us like to be right, or because we mean well in our hearts, even if we're dead wrong. I remember when I first started preaching inclusion, I was in a public place here doing some business, and a gentleman walked right up to me. He wasn't that gentle, and he just walked to me and said, I think you're dead wrong. And I wanted to say, get me a bat. If you don't get out of my, Now that was the wrong reaction, but for him to say, I think you're dead wrong, I want to say, who asked your opinion? Fool. I didn't even know that was in me. It was down in there somewhere. Who cares what you think? I don't care what you think. Actually, I do care what he thinks. Because that was like rejection. I don't care. I don't care. Just leave. When we say that, we mean usually the exact opposite. I wish I didn't care. I don't want to care. I don't want to love you so much that your opinion counts. I don't want to be tied to you passionately or emotionally or sentimentally. We have the same mother and father. We live in the same home, and now one of them's gone, and we don't talk. I'm not talking to anybody anymore. I'm not a part of this family. That's deeply painful. So when do we release that, and how? First, we make a decision that it's not worth hanging on to, because you're depending on your sense of independence. And when you lose the independence, you freak out. Look at me when I tell you it's okay to hang on. It's okay to let go. Don't be trapped by either. And don't demean or diminish your essence because of either. It's okay to hang on. Say it. It's okay if I hang on. And it's okay if I let go. But when I hit the bottom, because when you let go, you could splatter your very soul against the bottom, whatever the bottom is. Manage your dependencies. I love sugar. I know it's a poison. I know it's toxic, but I love it, so I don't just stop. I ain't gonna just stop eating sugar. I'm gonna have me some sugar. But I have it incrementally. I have it in moderation. I have it every day. I have it. My sister-in-law brought to the house last night this big tray full of donuts and cinnamon rolls, and I said, these are demons, but give me one. I ain't gonna cast that demon out. I'm gonna cast that one in, a big old donut. I mean, that's one of my weaknesses. It's been one of my weaknesses since I was a child. Okay, I accepted the fact that I really like glazed donuts. I really like custard-filled donuts, chocolate-covered. I love donuts, even though my wife tells me it's do not. I still love my donuts. So I can't just break it cold turkey. I have to take my time, and I don't accuse myself or demean myself because I like some sugar. I like probably too much salt in my food. I probably like too much food. I hate jogging. But I do it. I get up and every morning I run around the block 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 times. Then I push it back under the bed and go take a shower. Some of y'all will get that next week. Let me close with this. The gift of independence is in many ways an elusive fantasy that takes imagination, effort, and creative work. A gift is something willingly given without being earned, and it can be taken away. Talent is something we're born with. It's natural aptitude. It's neither given or taken away, even though it can atrophy from lack of use. Talent can be nurtured, it can be enhanced, it can be perfected, but independence is earned or procured and must be maintained. If you want independence, you must be a good custodian. Realistically, independence is actually a form of dependency or codependency. It needs attention to be maintained in a way that talent doesn't. Theoretically, independence should be intrinsic. It should be innate. But rarely, if ever, is independence experienced in love, in relationships, socially, psychologically, physically. Let's work both for and on our gifts and the guts of independence. Put your arms around yourself. You are a dependent entity. As human beings, we are social, spiritual, sensual, and sexual beings. All of them work together. All of them have their place and space and pace in our lives. The independence that we're going to celebrate on July 4th, 17,000 revolutionary soldiers died from disease during that war. 4,000 or 5,000 were killed with guns, but 4 times that many died from disease. 25,000 revolutionary soldiers were estimated to have been wounded or maimed. 1 in 20 able-bodied white free males living in America died during that war. 24,000 British soldiers were killed during the war. Freedom ain't free, as they say, isn't free. It's never been free. It will never be free. You'll always have a monthly payment on it, even when you think you own it. It'll be a monthly or a mortgage payment every time you have it. Accept that, honor it, pay your bill, and maintain your freedom. Now lift those hands up and say, I accept my independence and what it costs me to be independent. And I accept my dependency and my codependency and my interdependency. And it's all good. Come on, mix it all up there. It's all good. It's all work. My attitude will determine my altitude. I got this. Do you have it? Levántense, stand on your feet. Thank you. The last paragraph of Patrick Henry's speech in the Second Virginia Convention that met in 1775. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren already are in the field. Why stand we here idle? Said Patrick Henry. What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. If you saw the movie Amistad, that one line that Mindy, the tribesman, said, Singby, I think his name, give us free, give us free, give us free. My soul shouted and sang and hung that phrase 15 years ago when I not only embraced inclusion, but inclusion embraced me. I sat in the theater and wept when I heard that line. A slave on a slave ship, they mutinied and took over the ship. You should read the story. Fabulous. Give us free. That's the cry of the human essence. It is actually recovering something that your soul is entitled to. Those who've read the scripture, the first command in the Bible in Genesis, supposedly from God to man, is you are free to eat from any tree or truth in the garden, except the one that says any of the other ones are good or bad. Give us free. Thank you, eternal essence. Nameless, faceless, paceless, ageless, timeless reality. We like to call you God. You gave us free with attachments of self-respect and respect for others. Give us free to be dependent, interdependent, codependent, and independent. Thank you that everything is consciousness and that our attitude really does determine our altitude. And still we rise. Have thine own way, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in the name and nature of all that's good and God. My soul says yes. Everybody say hallelujah. Thank you, God. Give somebody a high five right next to you and say, go and have a ball. Have a great day, everybody.
Hey, we're so happy you're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256 or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.